"You have no right to lock me out of a family gathering," I declared, my voice shaking but resolute as I faced my daughter-in-law, Emily. Just a week ago, I couldn't have imagined standing on the street, peering through the window of my son's home, wondering how everything spiraled out of control. Let me take you back to how this heartbreaking situation unfolded. As the autumn leaves began their gentle dance to the ground, I was filled with anticipation for Thanksgiving, a time when family comes together in warmth and gratitude. I had spent hours in my cozy, pumpkin-scented kitchen, preparing my famous apple pie. It was a recipe passed down from my own mother, cherished across generations. But beneath the cinnamon and sugar lay the tension that had been brewing ever since my son's wedding. Emily was young, assertive, with a magnetism that had drawn my son, Michael, like a moth to a flame. Initially, I admired her independence and the way she managed both career and family with ease. Yet, there was a rift forming, a subtle shift whenever family traditions were mentioned. She often dismissed my stories of past holidays or how we used to do things, replacing them with her new ways. I tried to embrace change, but every lock clicked louder each time Emily insisted on modernizing our gatherings. Then came the moment that changed everything. As I stood at the doorstep, carrying the pie wrapped in a cloth, Emily met me with a polite smile, masking the cold decision she had made. "This room is for guests, not for grandmas," she said, before shutting the door to the extra bedroom I had always used during my visits. I was dumbfounded. Was I not family? Where was the room for someone who had only ever sought to love and nurture? This is the story of how family bonds can be tested to their limits. If you believe in preserving what's dear and standing your ground, subscribe and hit the bell icon. You're not going to want to miss how we find our way back to what truly matters. Standing there on the doorstep, the weight of the apple pie in my hands felt heavier than ever, as if it carried not just the warmth of my kitchen, but the burden of every unspoken word between Emily and me. The door had shut with a quiet click, but it echoed in my chest like a thunderclap. I could still see the faint outline of her polite smile through the frosted glass, a smile that didn't reach her eyes, a smile that told me I was no longer welcome in the way I once was. My breath fogged in the crisp November air as I stood frozen, trying to process her words. This room is for guests, not for grandmas. The sting of it cut deeper than the autumn chill, and I felt the first tears prick at the corners of my eyes. But I blinked them back. I wasn't ready to let her see me break. Not yet. I turned away from the door, clutching the pie tighter, and made my way down the porch steps. The street was quiet, save for the rustle of leaves skittering across the pavement. I glanced back at the house, my son Michael's house, the one I'd helped him pick out years ago after he graduated college. It had been a fixer-upper back then, a little bungalow with peeling paint and a sagging porch. But I'd spent weekends with him, sanding floors and painting walls, dreaming of the family he'd build here. Now, through the glowing window, I could see the silhouettes of people moving inside, laughter spilling out into the night. Thanksgiving was in full swing, and I was on the outside looking in, literally and figuratively. How had it come to this? I settled onto the curb, the pie resting on my lap, and let my mind wander back over the past year, searching for the moment when the cracks in our family began to show. Emily had come into our lives like a whirlwind. She was everything I wasn't. Modern, confident, with a sharp wit and a career in marketing that kept her glued to her phone even during family dinners. Michael had been smitten from the start, and I couldn't blame him. She was beautiful, with her sleek blonde hair and tailored blazers, and she had a way of commanding a room without even trying. At first, I'd been thrilled. I'd always wanted a daughter-in-law I could bond with, someone to share recipes and stories with, someone to carry on the little traditions that had meant so much to me over the years. But it didn't take long for me to realize that Emily had no interest in the past, at least not mine. The first sign came at last year's Thanksgiving, when I'd suggested we say a prayer before the meal, a tradition my late husband and I had kept since Michael was a baby. Emily had laughed, a short, sharp sound that caught me off guard, and said, "Oh, we don't do that anymore." "It's a bit outdated, don't you think?" Michael had shifted uncomfortably in his seat, avoiding my eyes, and I'd let it go, though it hurt more than I cared to admit. Then there were the smaller things, the microaggressions that piled up like fallen leaves. She'd interrupt me when I tried to tell stories about Michael's childhood, saying, "Oh, I've heard that one already," even when I knew she hadn't. She'd rearrange the holiday decorations I'd brought over, muttering under her breath about how tacky they were. And once, when I'd offered to help with the cooking, she'd smiled tightly and said, "I've got it under control. I'm used to doing things a certain way." Each of those moments had felt like a tiny jab, a reminder that I was being pushed to the edges of my own family. But I'd told myself to be patient. Change was hard, and Emily was young, barely 30, with a worldview shaped by a generation I didn't always understand. I'd tried to meet her halfway, to learn her ways, to show her that I wasn't trying to cling to the past out of stubbornness, but out of love. The apple pie in my lap was proof of that. It wasn't just a dessert. It was a piece of my history, a symbol of the warmth and togetherness I'd always tried to create for my family. My mother had taught me to make it when I was a girl, standing on a stool in her kitchen, my small hands dusted with flour as she guided me through the steps. "This pie is our family's heart," she'd said, and I'd carried those words with me through every Thanksgiving since. I'd hoped Emily would see that, would taste the love baked into every slice. But now I wondered if she'd even let me set it on the table. As I sat there on the curb, lost in thought, I heard the faint creak of the front door opening. My heart leapt for a moment, thinking it might be Michael coming to check on me. But instead, it was Emily's younger brother, Ethan, stepping out onto the porch with a cigarette in hand. Ethan was a quiet man in his mid-20s, with the same sharp features as his sister, but none of her confidence. He worked odd jobs, construction one month, delivery driving the next, and always seemed a little lost, as if he were still figuring out his place in the world. He'd been staying with Michael and Emily for the past few weeks, ever since he'd been evicted from his last apartment, and I'd noticed how he hovered around Emily like a shadow, always quick to agree with her, always eager to please. "Hey, Mrs. Carter," he mumbled, lighting his cigarette and avoiding my gaze. You, doing okay out here?" I forced a smile, though it felt brittle on my lips. "I've been better, Ethan. Just needed some fresh air." He nodded, taking a drag, and I could tell he wanted to say something more but didn't know how. Finally, he muttered, She's got a lot on her plate right now, you know? She doesn't mean to come off harsh." I looked at him, searching his face for some sign of conviction, but all I saw was discomfort. Ethan wasn't a bad person, not by any stretch, but he was weak in a way that made my stomach twist. He saw how Emily treated me, heard the cutting remarks and the dismissive tone, but he never spoke up, never challenged her. I suspected it was partly out of loyalty to his sister, and partly because he depended on her, on the roof over his head, on the meals she cooked, on the stability she provided. Whatever the reason, his silence felt like a betrayal, a quiet complicity in the way I was being sidelined. "I appreciate you saying that, Ethan," I said softly, "but I'm not sure I believe it. Actions speak louder than words, and hers have been pretty clear tonight." He shifted on his feet, looking down at the glowing tip of his cigarette as if it held the answers. "Yeah, I guess. I'm sorry, though. I wish I could, I don't know, make it better." I didn't respond, letting the silence stretch between us. What could he do, really? He wasn't the one shutting doors in my face, but he wasn't opening them either. After a moment, he stubbed out his cigarette on the porch railing and headed back inside, leaving me alone again with my thoughts and the pie that was growing cold in my lap. The house across the street caught my eye then, its porch light flickering faintly in the dusk. It was an old Victorian, much like the one I'd grown up in, with intricate trim and a wraparound porch that had always reminded me of simpler times. That house, or rather, the idea of it, had become a kind of symbol for me over the years. It represented the family home, the place where memories were made, where generations gathered to laugh and cry and grow old together. My own childhood home was long gone, sold after my parents passed, but I'd always dreamed of creating something similar for Michael, a sanctuary where he could bring his own children someday, where I could sit on the porch and watch them play. Michael's bungalow wasn't that house, not yet, but I'd poured so much of myself into it, into every repaired step, every painted wall, that it felt like an extension of that dream. Now, though, it felt like that dream was slipping through my fingers, locked behind a door I couldn't open. I sighed, brushing a stray leaf off the cloth covering the pie, and decided I couldn't sit there forever. I needed to talk to someone, to get this weight off my chest before it crushed me entirely. My oldest friend, Margaret, lived just a few blocks away, and I knew she'd be home, probably sipping tea and watching reruns of old sitcoms. Margaret had been my rock for decades, ever since we'd met as young mothers in a parenting group at the local library. She'd seen me through my husband's illness, through the ups and downs of raising Michael, and I knew she'd listen now, even if I didn't have all the words to explain what I was feeling. I stood, brushing the dirt from my coat, and started walking. The pie felt like an anchor in my arms, but I held onto it anyway, as if letting go would mean letting go of something bigger. The streets were quiet, the glow of Thanksgiving decorations lighting up windows as I passed. I could hear faint laughter and the clink of dishes from inside the houses, reminders of the warmth I'd been denied. By the time I reached Margaret's small, craftsman-style home, my cheeks were damp with tears I hadn't even realized I'd shed. She answered the door in her familiar flannel robe, her gray hair pulled back in a loose bun, and took one look at me before pulling me into a hug. "Oh, Helen, what's happened?" she asked, her voice soft but firm, the kind of tone that told me she was ready to fight for me if I needed her to. We sat at her kitchen table, a pot of chamomile tea steaming between us, and I poured out everything. The tension with Emily, the dismissive comments, the door shutting in my face, the pie I'd made with so much hope now sitting untouched on Margaret's counter. She listened quietly, her hands folded in front of her, her eyes full of understanding. "It's not just about the room, Margaret," I said, my voice breaking. "It's about what it represents. I've always been there for Michael, for his family, and now I feel like I'm being erased, like I'm not even part of it anymore." Margaret reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You're not being erased, Helen. Emily might be trying to push you out, but Michael's still your son. He's still the boy you raised. Have you talked to him about this? Really talked to him?" I shook my head, staring into my tea. "I've tried, but he's caught in the middle, I think. He doesn't want to upset Emily, and I don't want to force him to choose. But it's hard, Margaret. It's so hard to watch him let her treat me this way." She nodded, her expression thoughtful. "Sometimes people don't see what's right in front of them until it's pointed out. You might need to be more direct with him. And with Emily, too. You've got a right to your place in that family, pie or no pie." I managed a small smile at that, but the ache in my chest didn't ease. I knew Margaret was right, but the thought of confronting Emily, or worse, Michael, made my stomach churn. What if I pushed too hard and lost them both for good? The rest of the evening passed in a blur of quiet conversation and more tea, but as I walked home later that night, the pie still in my hands, I couldn't shake the feeling that something darker was at play. Emily's behavior wasn't just about modernizing traditions or asserting her independence. There was a coldness to it, a deliberate edge that felt personal. I remembered a moment from a few months back when I'd overheard her on the phone in the kitchen, her voice low and sharp. "I'm not letting her take over everything," she'd said, and though I hadn't caught the rest of the conversation, the venom in her tone had stayed with me. Who had she been talking about? Me? And if so, why did she see me as such a threat? The next morning, I woke with a heavy heart but a resolve to try again. Thanksgiving might have been a bust, but the holiday weekend wasn't over, and I wasn't ready to give up on my family just yet. I called Michael, hoping to catch him before Emily could intervene, and asked if I could come by to drop off the pie and spend a little time with him. His voice was hesitant on the other end of the line, but he agreed, saying Emily would be out running errands for a couple of hours. When I arrived at the house, Michael greeted me at the door with a tired smile. He looked older somehow, the lines around his eyes deeper than I remembered, and I wondered if the tension between Emily and me was weighing on him more than I'd realized. We sat in the living room, the pie on the coffee table between us, and for a while we talked about small things. Work, the weather, the football game he'd watched the night before. But I could feel the unspoken questions hanging in the air. And finally, I couldn't hold them in any longer. "Michael, why didn't you say anything last night?" I asked, my voice quieter than I'd intended. "When Emily shut the door on me, when she told me I wasn't welcome in the guest room, why didn't you stand up for me?" He looked down at his hands, his fingers twisting together in a way that reminded me of when he was a boy, caught in a lie or struggling to find the right words. "Mom, I didn't know what to say. Emily's got her own ideas about how things should be, and I don't want to fight with her, especially not on Thanksgiving. I thought maybe you'd understand, that it wasn't personal." "Not personal?" I repeated, my voice rising despite myself. "Michael, she locked me out of a family gathering. She told me I'm not family, not in the way that matters. How is that not personal?" He flinched at my words, and I immediately regretted my tone, but I couldn't take it back. The hurt was too raw, too fresh. Before he could respond, the front door opened, and Emily stepped inside, a bag of groceries in her arms. Her eyes narrowed as she saw me sitting there, and I felt the air in the room shift, growing colder in an instant. "I didn't realize we were expecting company," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. She set the bag down on the counter with a deliberate thud, then turned to face me, her arms crossed. "I thought I made it clear last night, Helen. This isn't your space anymore. We're building our own traditions now, and I'm sorry if that's hard for you to accept, but I'm not going to let you cling to the past and drag us all down with you." Her words hit me like a slap, each one sharper than the last. I stood, my hands trembling, and looked at Michael, waiting for him to say something, anything, to defend me. But he just sat there, his eyes on the floor, his silence louder than any shout. And in that moment, I realized the true extent of what I was up against. Emily wasn't just pushing me out. She was rewriting the story of our family, erasing me from it entirely. And Michael, my own son, was letting her do it. I picked up the pie from the coffee table, its weight a bitter reminder of everything I'd lost, and walked to the door without another word. As I stepped outside, Emily's voice followed me, low and cutting, meant for my ears alone. "Don't come back until you've learned your place, Grandma." The door shut behind me, and I stood there, the pie in my hands, the tears finally spilling over. This wasn't just a fight over a room or a holiday. It was a battle for my family, for the legacy I'd spent a lifetime building. And as I walked away, I knew I couldn't let Emily win, not without a fight. The cold November air bit at my skin as I stood on the porch, the apple pie trembling in my hands, Emily's final words ringing in my ears like a cruel taunt. "Don't come back until you've learned your place, Grandma." The door had shut with a finality that felt like a gavel striking, sentencing me to exile from the very family I'd spent my life nurturing. Tears streamed down my face, no longer held back by pride or restraint, and I let them fall, each one a silent testament to the hurt that had been building for months, maybe even years. The pie, once a symbol of love and tradition, now felt like a mockery of everything I'd tried to preserve. I clutched it tighter, as if it could anchor me to a past that was slipping away faster than I could grasp. I started walking, though I had no clear destination in mind. The streets of the small suburban neighborhood were quiet, the glow of Thanksgiving leftovers and early Christmas lights flickering in windows as families gathered inside, their laughter a distant echo of what I'd lost. My feet carried me past familiar houses, past the park where I'd pushed Michael on the swings as a boy, past the corner store where we'd bought ice cream on sticky summer evenings. Every landmark was a memory, a piece of the life I'd built with my son, and now it all felt tainted by Emily's cold dismissal. I didn't know how long I wandered, lost in thought, but eventually, I found myself back at my own modest home, a small ranch-style house I'd lived in since my husband passed. The porch light was off, the windows dark, and the silence inside was suffocating as I stepped through the door. I set the pie on the kitchen counter, unable to look at it any longer, and sank into a chair at the dining table. My hands, still dusted with the faint residue of flour from baking, folded in front of me as I stared at the worn wood, tracing the scratches and stains from years of family meals. I wanted to call Michael, to scream at him for letting Emily treat me this way, to demand an explanation for why he'd stood by in silence while his wife tore me apart. But I couldn't bring myself to pick up the phone. What would I even say? The hurt was too raw, too jagged, and I feared that any words I spoke now would only widen the chasm between us. Instead, I sat there, replaying the night's events over and over in my mind. Emily's smug expression as she'd crossed her arms, her voice dripping with disdain as she told me I was clinging to the past. Michael's averted gaze, his refusal to meet my eyes, his silence louder than any apology could ever be. And then there was Ethan, hovering on the edges, always quick to excuse his sister's behavior, but never brave enough to challenge it. I thought about what Margaret had said, her advice to be direct, to fight for my place in the family. But how could I fight when it felt like I was battling not just Emily, but Michael's complicity, Ethan's cowardice, and my own fear of losing them all? The next morning I woke with a dull ache in my chest, the events of Thanksgiving still fresh and painful. I moved through my routine on autopilot, making coffee, tidying the kitchen, staring at the pie that still sat on the counter, untouched and cold. I knew I couldn't let this fester, couldn't let Emily's words be the final say in our family's story. So, with a deep breath and a resolve I wasn't sure I felt, I decided to go back to their house. Not to beg or plead, but to confront this head-on, to demand the respect I deserved as Michael's mother, as the woman who'd helped build the very home Emily now claimed as her own. I dressed carefully, choosing a sweater and slacks that made me feel put together, as if appearances could shield me from the vulnerability I felt inside. I left the pie behind this time, unwilling to offer another piece of myself only to have it rejected. The drive to Michael and Emily's house was short, but each turn of the wheel felt heavier, each block a step closer to a battle I wasn't sure I could win. When I pulled up to the bungalow, I saw Emily's car in the driveway, and my stomach twisted. I'd hoped to catch Michael alone again, to have a real conversation without her interference. But it seemed fate had other plans. I knocked on the door, my heart pounding in my chest, and after a long moment, Emily answered. She stood there in a crisp white blouse and tailored pants, her hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail, looking every bit the modern, untouchable woman she'd always presented herself as. Her eyes flicked over me, assessing, before a tight smile curled her lips. "Helen," she said, her tone clipped. "I didn't expect to see you back so soon. I thought I was clear last night." I swallowed hard, forcing my voice to stay steady. "You were clear, Emily. But I'm not here to beg for a seat at your table. I'm here to talk to my son, and I'm not leaving until I do." Her smile faltered for a split second. A flicker of something, annoyance maybe, or unease, crossing her face before she masked it with that same cold politeness. "Michael's busy right now. We're in the middle of planning some holiday events, and I'm sure you understand how important it is to focus on our family's future. Why don't you call later? Or better yet, wait for an invitation." Her words were a deliberate jab, a reminder of the door she'd shut in my face. Both literally and figuratively. I felt the anger rise in me, hot and sharp. But I kept it in check, my hands clenched at my sides. "Emily, I've been patient. I've tried to understand your perspective, to give you space to build your life with Michael. But I'm his mother, and I have a right to be part of this family, whether you like it or not. I'm not asking for an invitation. I'm telling you I'm not going anywhere." She tilted her head, her smile turning colder, more predatory. "Oh, Helen, I think you've misunderstood. This isn't about rights. It's about what's best for Michael and me. And frankly, your nostalgia, your need to cling to outdated traditions, it's holding us back. We're moving forward, and if you can't keep up, maybe it's time you stepped aside. Permanently." The word permanently hung in the air, heavy with implication, and I felt a chill run down my spine. This wasn't just about Thanksgiving or a guest room. This was a declaration of war, a statement that she intended to erase me from Michael's life entirely. Before I could respond, I heard footsteps behind her, and Michael appeared in the doorway, his expression a mix of exhaustion and discomfort. He looked between us, his shoulders slumped, and I saw the weight of this conflict etched into every line of his face. "Mom," he started, his voice low. "What's going on? I thought we talked yesterday." "We talked, Michael, but nothing was resolved," I said, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and desperation. "Your wife just told me I should step aside permanently. Do you agree with that? Do you think I don't belong in your life anymore?" His eyes dropped to the floor, a habit I'd seen too many times in the past few days, and I felt my heart sink. "Mom, I don't want to fight. Emily and I are trying to build something here, and it's hard enough without all this tension. I just wish you could see her side of things." "Her side?" I repeated, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. "Her side is pushing me out of your life, Michael. Her side is telling me I'm a burden, that I'm holding you back, and you're standing there letting her say it. Where's my son in all this? The boy I raised to stand up for what's right, to protect his family." Emily stepped forward then, placing a hand on Michael's arm as if to claim him, her smile never wavering. "Helen, let's not make this more dramatic than it needs to be. Michael's made his choice, and I think it's time you accepted it. In fact, I have a proposal that might make this easier for everyone." She paused, her eyes glinting with something I couldn't quite place, before continuing. "I think it's time we formalized things. Michael and I have been discussing the future, and we'd like to take full ownership of this house. It's in his name, of course, but I think it would be best if you signed over any emotional claim or involvement you think you have here. We can draft a little agreement, nothing legal, just a mutual understanding that you'll step back from this property and from our lives, unless invited. It's for clarity, you understand. So there's no more confusion about your place." Her words hit me like a physical blow, each one a calculated strike designed to strip me of everything I held dear. This house, the bungalow I'd helped Michael choose, the one I'd poured my sweat and tears into alongside him, was more than just a building. It was a symbol of our bond, of the dreams we'd shared for his future. And now Emily wanted me to sign away my connection to it, to agree in writing that I had no right to be part of their world. It was absurd, outrageous, a demand so callous that it took my breath away. I stared at her, searching for any sign of jest or hesitation, but there was none. She meant every word. "No," I said, the word bursting out of me with a force I hadn't expected. It wasn't just a refusal, it was a line in the sand, a declaration that I would not be erased, not by her, not by anyone. "Absolutely not, Emily. I will not sign away my family, my history, or my place in this house. You don't get to dictate where I belong. I'm Michael's mother, and no piece of paper, no mutual understanding will change that. You've overstepped, and I'm done letting you push me around." For the first time, I saw a crack in her facade, a flicker of surprise in her eyes as she registered the steel in my voice. But she recovered quickly, her smile tightening. "Helen, be reasonable. This isn't about pushing you out. It's about boundaries. Surely you can see that." "Boundaries?" I shot back, my voice shaking with anger now. "This isn't about boundaries, Emily. This is about control. You've been trying to control this family since the day you walked into it, dismissing everything I've ever done, every memory I've tried to share. And I've let you, because I wanted to keep the peace, because I didn't want to lose my son. But I'm done. I'm not signing anything, and I'm not stepping back. If you want me out of this family, you're going to have to drag me out yourself." The air between us crackled with tension, and for a moment no one spoke. I turned to Michael, my eyes pleading with him to say something, to stand up for me, to show me that I wasn't alone in this fight. "Michael, please," I said, my voice softer now, almost a whisper. "I know you're caught in the middle, but I need you to see what's happening here. She's asking me to give up everything, our history, our bond, this house. Don't let her do this. Don't let her take me away from you." He looked at me then, his eyes filled with a pain I hadn't seen since he was a teenager struggling with his father's illness. But he didn't speak. He opened his mouth, then closed it again, his gaze dropping back to the floor. His silence was deafening, a confirmation of the loneliness I'd feared all along. My own son, the boy I'd raised, the man I'd dreamed of building a future with, couldn't, or wouldn't, stand by me when I needed him most. I felt a tear slip down my cheek, but I didn't wipe it away. Let them see it. Let them see what this was doing to me. Emily seized the moment, stepping closer, her voice low and cutting. "Helen, you're making this harder than it needs to be. Why don't you go home, think it over? I'm sure you'll see that this is the best way forward, for everyone." She reached out, as if to guide me toward the door, but I flinched away from her touch, my hands balling into fists at my sides. "Don't touch me," I snapped, my voice raw with emotion. "You don't get to dismiss me like I'm some inconvenience, Emily. You think you can just rewrite our family, erase me from it, and Michael will be better off for it? You're wrong. You don't know the first thing about what this family means, about the love and sacrifice that built it. You look at my traditions, my stories, my pie, and you see something outdated, something to be thrown away. But those things are the heart of who we are, who Michael is. And I'll be damned if I let you strip that away because you think you're somehow better than me." Her eyes narrowed, her composure slipping for just a moment as my words hit their mark. "Helen, you're being ridiculous. This isn't about love or sacrifice. It's about reality. Michael and I are the future of this family, and you're stuck in the past. If you can't accept that, then maybe you're the one who doesn't belong here." I laughed then, a bitter, broken sound that surprised even me. "The future? Is that what you call this? Tearing apart a family, driving a wedge between a mother and her son, all so you can have your perfect little life without any reminders of where it came from? You're not building a future, Emily. You're destroying one. And I'm not going to stand by and watch you do it. I've spent my life fighting for this family, for Michael, and I'm not stopping now. So go ahead, draft your little agreement, make your demands. I'm not signing anything. I'm not stepping aside. And if you think you can force me out, you're going to have to try a lot harder than this." The words poured out of me, fueled by months of pent-up hurt and frustration. And as I spoke, I felt something shift inside me. It was as if a dam had broken, releasing a flood of resolve I hadn't known I still possessed. I wasn't just fighting for a place at the table or a room in their house. I was fighting for my identity, for the legacy I'd built, for the love I'd poured into every moment of Michael's life. And in that moment, I realized I wasn't afraid anymore. Let Emily push. Let Michael stay silent. I wasn't backing down. Emily stared at me, her expression a mix of shock and fury. And for the first time, I saw uncertainty in her eyes. She hadn't expected this, hadn't expected me to push back with such force. But she recovered quickly, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "You're making a mistake, Helen, a big one. You think you can just waltz in here and demand to be part of our lives? You're wrong. And if you keep pushing, you're going to lose everything, Michael included." Her threat hung in the air, sharp and venomous, but I didn't flinch. I looked at Michael one last time, hoping against hope for a sign of support. But he remained silent, his eyes still fixed on the floor. The weight of his inaction settled over me like a heavy fog, but it didn't break me. If anything, it steeled my resolve. I turned back to Emily, my voice steady now, despite the storm raging inside me. "Then I'll lose him fighting for what's right," I said quietly. "But I'm not losing him because I gave up. You don't get to decide my worth in this family, Emily. And you don't get to take away the love I've given. So go ahead, try to push me out. I'll be here, every step of the way, reminding you that I'm not going anywhere." With that, I turned and walked out the door, my heart pounding but my head held high. The cold air hit me again, but this time it didn't feel as biting. I'd said my piece, drawn my line, and though the battle was far from over, I knew I'd taken the first real step in fighting for my family. Emily might think she'd won this round, but I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. As I made my way back to my car, I felt the weight of the past and the uncertainty of the future, but I also felt something new. A fire, a determination that hadn't been there before. This wasn't just about a room or a holiday. It was about who I was, who we were as a family, and I was ready to fight for it with everything I had. As I drove away from Michael and Emily's house, the fire in my chest still burned, but it was tempered by a heavy, aching sadness. The image of Michael's downcast eyes, his refusal to speak up, replayed in my mind like a broken record. I'd stood my ground, said what needed to be said, but the victory felt hollow. I hadn't won anything yet, not my son's support, not my place in their lives, and certainly not the battle against Emily's cold determination to push me out. The war was just beginning, and I knew I couldn't fight it alone. I needed a plan, a strategy, something more than raw emotion to reclaim what was mine. My family wasn't just a feeling, it was a legacy, a history, and I'd be damned if I let Emily rewrite it without a fight. The next morning, I woke early, the weight of the previous day still pressing down on me. I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee, staring at the phone as if it held the answers. Margaret's words echoed in my mind. Fight for your place. Be direct. But I knew this wasn't just about a conversation anymore. Emily's proposal to formalize my exclusion from their lives, her demand for a written agreement to step back, had crossed a line into something more sinister. It wasn't just personal. It felt calculated, like a move to secure her control over Michael and everything we'd built together, including the house. That bungalow wasn't just a home. It was a symbol of my bond with my son, a piece of our shared history. I'd helped him buy it, put in countless hours of labor to make it livable, and though it was in his name, I'd always seen it as ours. Emily's attempt to sever that connection wasn't just an insult. It was a threat to everything I held dear. I decided then and there that I needed help, professional help, someone who could look at this situation with clear eyes and tell me what my rights were, what I could do to protect my place in Michael's life. I wasn't about to let Emily's words or her smug confidence intimidate me into silence. So, I picked up the phone and called Margaret first, asking if she knew anyone who could guide me through this mess. Margaret, ever the practical one, didn't hesitate. Helen, you need to talk to a family lawyer. My cousin's husband, David, works in family law. He's dealt with disputes like this before. Estrangement, property issues, you name it. I'll give you his number. He's a good man, and he'll listen. Within the hour, I had an appointment with David set for the following day. The thought of bringing a lawyer into a family matter felt strange, almost wrong, like I was betraying some unspoken code of handling things privately. But as I sat there, replaying Emily's cold ultimatum in my mind, I realized this wasn't just a family spat anymore. It was a power grab, and I needed to fight fire with fire. I spent the rest of the day gathering my thoughts, jotting down every incident I could remember, every dismissive comment, every time Emily had pushed me out, every moment Michael had stayed silent. I even dug through old boxes in the attic to find the paperwork from when Michael bought the house, hoping there might be something there to prove my contribution, my stake in it, even if it wasn't legal. There were receipts for materials we'd bought together, photos of us sanding floors and painting walls, and even a handwritten note from Michael thanking me for helping him turn the fixer-upper into a home. It wasn't much, but it was evidence of my investment, both emotional and financial, and I wasn't about to let Emily erase that history with a piece of paper and a smile. Meeting David the next day felt like stepping into a new world, one I wasn't sure I belonged in. His office was in a quiet part of town, a small brick building with a modest sign out front that read, Law Offices of David Reynolds. Inside, it smelled of old books and coffee, and David himself was a middle-aged man with kind eyes and a firm handshake. He listened patiently as I poured out my story, starting with the first tensions with Emily, and ending with her recent demand for a written agreement to step back from their lives. I told him about the house, about the work I'd put into it, about the emotional significance it held for me. I even brought the receipts and photos, spreading them out on his desk like a lifeline. David leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful but serious. "Helen, I'm going to be honest with you. Legally, since the house is in Michael's name, you don't have a direct claim to it, even if you contributed financially or through labor. There's no formal agreement or deed that ties you to the property. However," he added, holding up a hand as my heart sank, "there are other angles we can explore. Emily's attempt to get you to sign an agreement relinquishing your emotional claim or involvement in their lives isn't legally binding in any way. It's more of a psychological tactic, a way to intimidate you into stepping back. But it does show intent, and if we can document a pattern of exclusion or alienation, especially if it's affecting your relationship with your son, we might have grounds to address this as a form of familial estrangement or even emotional abuse." I nodded, trying to process his words. "So what can I do? I don't want to sue my own son, David. I just want to protect my place in his life. I want Emily to stop trying to erase me." David gave me a reassuring smile. "I understand, and we're not talking about a lawsuit right now. What I suggest is a two-pronged approach. First, we draft a formal letter to Emily and Michael, outlining your desire to maintain a relationship with your son and your contributions to the family, including the house. It won't be legally binding, but it will serve as a documented record of your intent to remain involved, and a counter to Emily's attempt to formalize your exclusion. Second, I recommend we look into mediation. It's a process where a neutral third party helps facilitate a conversation between you, Michael, and Emily to address these issues. It's less adversarial than court, and it might help Michael see the situation more clearly without feeling like he's choosing sides. The idea of mediation gave me a flicker of hope. I didn't want to drag Michael through a legal battle, but I also couldn't let Emily continue to dictate the terms of my family. David and I spent the next hour discussing the details, how the letter would be worded, what mediation might look like, and how to approach Michael without alienating him further. By the time I left his office, I felt a strange mix of relief and determination. I had a plan, a concrete step forward, and for the first time in days, I didn't feel entirely powerless. But David had also advised me to take a step back for a little while, to give everyone space to cool off before moving forward with the letter or mediation. Sometimes, a little distance can reveal more than confrontation, he'd said. Let Emily and Michael sit with what's happened. It might force them to confront their own actions, or at least give you some perspective on how to approach this next. I wasn't thrilled with the idea of stepping away. It felt like giving Emily what she wanted, but I trusted David's judgment. So, I resolved to keep my distance for a couple of weeks, focusing on myself and letting the dust settle. Those 2 weeks were harder than I expected. I filled my days with small tasks, cleaning the house, catching up with Margaret over tea, even starting a knitting project I'd abandoned years ago. But every quiet moment brought my thoughts back to Michael. I wondered if he missed me, if he felt the weight of my absence the way I felt his. I wondered if Emily was using this time to tighten her grip on him, to convince him that life was better without me in it. The uncertainty gnawed at me, but I held firm, trusting that David's strategy would pay off. During that time, I also received an unexpected call from Ethan, Emily's younger brother. His voice was hesitant on the other end of the line, and I could hear the discomfort in every word. "Hey, Mrs. Carter, I wanted to check on you. I know things have been rough lately, and I feel kind of stuck in the middle, you know? I'm sorry for not saying more when she said those things. I just didn't know how to handle it." I listened, my heart softening a little despite myself. Ethan wasn't the enemy, even if his silence had hurt. He was young, dependent on Emily for stability, and I could tell he was struggling with his own sense of right and wrong. "Thank you for calling, Ethan," I said quietly. "I appreciate you reaching out. I know it's not easy for you either. I just hope you understand why I'm fighting for this. It's not about control or tradition. It's about family. About not losing the people I love." He was quiet for a long moment before replying. "Yeah, I get it. I'll try to talk to Emily, okay? I don't know if it'll help, but I'll try." I thanked him again, though I didn't hold out much hope. Ethan's heart might have been in the right place, but his loyalty to his sister ran deep, and I doubted he'd risk her wrath for me. As the 2 weeks came to an end, I met with David again to finalize the letter. It was carefully worded, firm, but not accusatory, stating my desire to remain an active part of Michael's life and acknowledging my contributions to the house as a shared family history. David also suggested including a request for mediation, framing it as a way to rebuild trust and communication. "This letter is your first move," he explained. "It's a formal record of your intent, and if Emily or Michael refuse to engage, it strengthens your position if we need to escalate later." With the letter sent via certified mail to ensure it was received, I waited. The days that followed were tense, each one stretching out with no response from Michael or Emily. I began to worry that David's strategy had backfired, that Emily had simply dismissed the letter as another attempt to cling to the past. But then, on the 5th day, I got a call from David. His voice was calm, but carried an edge of satisfaction. "Helen, I've got good news. Michael reached out to my office this morning. He received the letter, and while he's not thrilled about the idea of mediation, he's agreed to meet with you and a mediator next week. Emily's coming too, though she's made it clear she's only there to set boundaries. But this is a step forward. It means they're willing to talk, even if it's grudgingly." Relief washed over me, though it was tinged with apprehension. A meeting wasn't a victory, not yet, but it was a crack in the wall Emily had built between us. I spent the next few days preparing, going over what I wanted to say with David, and even practicing with Margaret to keep my emotions in check. I didn't want to come across as desperate or angry. I wanted to be clear, composed, and unwavering in my commitment to my family. The day of the mediation arrived, and I walked into the neutral office space with my head held high, though my stomach was in knots. Michael and Emily were already there, seated across from the mediator, a middle-aged woman named Linda, with a calm, no-nonsense demeanor. Michael looked uncomfortable, his hands folded tightly in his lap, while Emily sat with her arms crossed, her expression a mask of cool detachment. I took my seat, meeting Michael's eyes for a brief moment before looking away. The pain of his silence still stung, but I was here to fight for him, for us, no matter how hard it was. Linda began by explaining the process, how mediation was about finding common ground, not assigning blame, and how everything said here was confidential. She invited me to speak first, and I took a deep breath, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. "Michael, Emily, I'm here because I love my family. I've always been there for Michael, through every up and down, and I've poured my heart into building a life with him, including the home you both live in now. I understand that change is part of life, that you're building your own future, but I can't accept being pushed out entirely. Emily, your words and actions have made me feel like I don't belong, like I'm a burden rather than a mother and grandmother. I'm asking for respect, for a place in this family, not control. I want to be part of your lives, not erased from them." I paused, letting my words settle, and saw Michael shift in his seat, his eyes flickering with something. Guilt, maybe, or recognition. Emily, however, remained unmoved, her smile tight as she responded. "Helen, I appreciate your perspective, but Michael and I need to prioritize our own family unit. We're not trying to erase you, but we can't have constant interference or drama. We've offered clarity through boundaries, and I think it's unreasonable for you to reject that. This mediation is a formality, but I hope it helps you see that stepping back is the best way forward." Her words were polished, rehearsed, but they carried the same cold intent I'd come to expect. Linda nodded, jotting down notes, before turning to Michael. "Michael, do you have anything to add? How do you see this situation?" He hesitated, his voice low when he finally spoke. I don't want to lose anyone. Mom, I know you've always been there for me, and I appreciate everything you've done. But Emily's my wife, and I have to support her too. I just want peace, you know? I don't know how to make everyone happy." His words cut deep, but they also gave me a sliver of hope. He hadn't fully sided with Emily. He was still torn, still struggling. Linda guided the conversation from there, asking questions about specific incidents. Thanksgiving, the guest room comment, the proposed agreement, and slowly, the layers of tension began to peel back. I spoke about the pain of being excluded, the weight of Emily's dismissive attitude, and the fear of losing my son. Emily countered with talk of modern family dynamics and the need for independence, but her arguments felt hollow, more about control than genuine concern. Then, something shifted. Linda asked Michael directly how he felt about the idea of me stepping back permanently, as Emily had suggested. He looked at her, then at me, and for the first time in months, I saw real emotion in his eyes. "I don't want that," he said quietly. "I don't want to lose my mom. I've been trying to keep things calm at home, and I didn't realize how much this was hurting you, Mom. I'm sorry." Those words, simple as they were, felt like a lifeline. Tears pricked at my eyes, but I held them back, nodding to let him know I heard him. Emily's expression tightened, a flicker of frustration crossing her face, but she didn't interrupt. Linda seized the moment, suggesting we work toward a mutual understanding. Not a written agreement, but a verbal commitment to respect each other's roles in the family. She proposed regular family meetings to address issues before they escalated, and even suggested I have a designated role in holiday planning to ensure my traditions weren't dismissed outright. By the end of the session, we'd agreed to a tentative plan: monthly check-ins, shared holiday responsibilities, and a promise from Emily to refrain from exclusionary comments or actions. It wasn't a perfect victory, but it was a start, a crack in the wall that had separated me from my son. Michael even hugged me as we left the room, a small gesture that felt monumental after so much distance. Emily remained distant, her smile forced, but I could see the uncertainty in her eyes. She hadn't expected Michael to speak up, hadn't expected me to hold my ground with such clarity. For the first time, I felt like I'd reclaimed a piece of my power, a piece of my family. In the days that followed, I received another call from Ethan. His voice was softer this time, more earnest. "Mrs. Carter, I heard about the mediation. I'm glad it went okay. I talked to Emily after, told her I thought she was being too hard on you. I don't know if it made a difference, but I wanted you to know I'm on your side, at least a little. I've seen how much you care about Michael, and I don't want to be part of pushing you away." His words surprised me, and though I knew his influence over Emily was limited, I thanked him sincerely. It felt like a small but significant shift, a sign that not everyone in that house was against me. To seal this newfound peace, I decided to do something symbolic, something that tied back to the heart of our family. I baked another apple pie, just like the one I'd carried on Thanksgiving. But this time, I invited Michael over to my house to share it. He came alone, without Emily, and we sat at my kitchen table, the scent of cinnamon and apples filling the air. We didn't talk about the mediation or the conflict at first. We just reminisced about old times, about his childhood, about the Thanksgivings we'd spent with his father. As we ate, I saw a softness in his eyes I hadn't seen in years, a reminder of the boy who'd always been my heart. "I've missed this, Mom," he said quietly, and I knew he meant more than just the pie. That moment was my catharsis, my reconnection to the peace I'd thought I'd lost forever. The pie wasn't just a dessert. It was a bridge, a way to rebuild what had been broken, slice by slice. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. Emily's resentment hadn't vanished, and Michael's loyalty would still be tested. But I'd fought for my place, and I'd won a piece of it back. I was Helen Carter, mother, grandmother, keeper of traditions, and no one could take that from me. Not without a fight I was more than ready to wage. And so, here I am, sharing this story with you, a story of hurt and healing, of standing up when everything seemed lost. If it's touched you, if it's reminded you of your own battles for family and belonging, I'd love to hear about it. Leave a like if you felt this journey with me, and drop a comment below. Have you ever had to fight for your place in your family? How did you find the strength to keep going? I'm all ears for your stories. And of course, subscribe for more tales of resilience and redemption. Until next time, hold your loved ones close, and never stop fighting for the bonds that matter most.